Today we explain why many Denki traitor theories don't make sense and show you our own version of this theory that we believe makes the most sense. Also, only a small percentage of the people who watch our videos are actually subscribed, so if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. Please enjoy this video, let's go! After our last traitor video, you literally crushed the comment section. So many wanted us to make a video of why Denki might be the traitor, so let's do it. One of the main reasons people suspect Denki is simply because he's so perfectly balanced for this position. And by perfectly balanced, I mean that he hasn't been too important to the story so far, but at the same time he's not unimportant either. So exposing him as a traitor would have no logical flaws and still give us a strong emotional feeling. Let me explain what I mean. Nobody expects any of the main characters in Class 1A to be the traitor. And by main characters I mean the one with the most screen time. But it's not just screen time that matters, but the richness and time invested in character development that comes with a lot of screen time. We got to know their backgrounds and intentions, saw their inner monologues and goals. And they had a lot of character development. To expose any of them as a traitor is simply impossible and will contradict everything that has built up around these characters. From this we can conclude that the traitor must be someone who has no or at least no significant internal monologues that will contradict any evil intentions towards heroes and especially Class 1A. Also, it should be a character with a fairly unknown background, as it is difficult to introduce a character as a traitor if we get too many details from that character, such as their parents, past, intentions and so on. But at the same time, we want to have an emotional investment in these characters for a plot as big as that of an undercover traitor, otherwise we would simply not care if one of the side characters is exposed as a traitor with little screen time. This also eliminates all side characters, but here are definitely two exceptions that we just cannot ignore: Toru, Hagakure and Aoyama. Despite little screen time, there are indications that one of them could be the traitor, so it wouldn't be a surprise and screen time is no longer needed, as the series itself has already provided enough hints for this idea. We made a video about why Hagakure could be the traitor. Please feel free to check it out after you finish this video. We will add the link in the comments. We are going to make a video about why Aoyama might be a traitor. If you don't want to miss this video, you can subscribe to our channel with the notification bell activated. So after we have eliminated the main and side characters, only the secondary characters remain. And here we simply apply the rules mentioned. Momo was born in a famous hero family, so she has literally always been influenced by hero mentality and ambition, which is pretty well reflected in her behavior in general. She is dedicated, very team-oriented, and generally has a heroic attitude. We saw internal monologues, emotional struggles and character development. Big no for a traitor. The same applies to Mina and Kirishima. Both even have a common background that connects them through the past. Both are very goal-oriented to become heroes so they can protect people. This also applies to Tokoyama. Then there's Tsuyu. We saw her family and a lot of emotion associated with character development. The same goes for Jiro. We've seen her parents, dreams, emotions and so on. And now there's Mineta. I would rather ignore his existence than waste a single second explaining why making him a traitor is a bad idea. So let's just move on. That leaves only Denki, a perfect mix of a character who get enough screen time for us to build an emotional connection with him, but at the same time his character doesn't have a deep development. So if he turns out to be a traitor, there won't be any contradictions. We don't know anything about his past, we haven't seen his parents, there are no internal monologues or any significant character development. He shows no real ambition for a certain goal, and the thought of becoming a hero doesn't seem to fascinate him, at least not compared to his classmates. However, he has an extraordinary quirk that is very powerful and handy in many situations. This enables him to become an amazing hero, so it's not a problem for him to pass all the exams. And now we come to a theory that has been around for some time and that we will prove to be impossible. But at the same time, we are deriving our own version from that theory that we think makes more sense. We know that the quirk that people inherit can influence their personality according to that quirk. For example, Toga's blood-sucking quirk has influenced her so much that she feels attracted to blood. And for example, Bakugo's explosion quirk and his explosive personality. But how can this be applied to Denki? His quirk is electricity. Electricity has a positive and a negative charge. Some people believe that Horikoshi took this concept and applied it to Denki's personality, so that he has a positive and a negative side, basically basically a split personality. Personally, I think it's a good idea, but I see a lot of problems associated with such a concept. Let me explain. First, if he was naturally born with this split personality, then his parents should have noticed and informed the school of his very dangerous side. But it is worth noting here that his parents may even be the reason why he works as a spy. We will talk about this in a moment. Furthermore, the really irritating thing about this idea is that if you have a split personality, because of the negative and positive charge of electricity, your personalities can only exist through coexistence. And that is exactly what makes them possible, given that the split personality is indeed the case. Both sides should have noticed that there was another personality. I mean, after 16 years, Denki's positive side would have to be a big idiot to never have noticed that sometimes he just does things he can't remember. At least his parents, friends, or acquaintances should have noticed something and confronted him with it. I just don't think Denki's positive side would notice all the blackouts, empty memories, and so on. You see, it's basically a cool and well thought idea, but in practical terms, this is just going to open way too many plot holes. But I agree that Horikoshi could have used this concept of negative and positive charge for Denki's personality, but in a different, much simpler way. Instead of having a split personality, he may be confused in an internal conflict between good and evil. Possibly he could originally have entered the UA with bad intention, for example because his parents are villains and maybe even work closely with All for One. In such a case, Denki would not have much choice, and he would have grown up with a villain mentality influenced by his parents, which would have had a very strong impact on his personality. But maybe Denki always had the feeling that something was wrong with all of this and he just didn't like being a villain, which represents his inner conflict. He did what he had to do, but during the first year in the UA, he started to develop a relationship with his friends, and because of the hero classes, he started to feel more like a hero rather than a villain. We know that some class 1A students tried to save Bakugo when he was abducted. They all knew pro heroes would attack the League of Villains headquarters that night. But before my partner Yami continues with this topic, please take a short moment to like this video. With your support, we can continue the My Hero Academia content on this channel. And now I give the mic to Yami. Have fun.
So if Denki was a traitor, in theory, he should have warned the villains, right? Well, yes, but like we said, Denki is young and his villain mentality could most likely come from the influence of his parents, which he could have changed due to the hero class and all of his new friends. That he didn't tell the villains the rescue plan means that he just didn't want it, because at that moment, he valued his friend's life more than anything. We actually have an official illustration by the author Horikoshi himself showing Denki and the possible concept of the positive and negative charge of electricity on his personality. So when we split his face, we see Denki as we know him, a funny guy who just wants to hang out with people. And on the other hand, we see someone who seems to be pretty vicious. However, this alone is not enough to suspect someone of being a traitor. There should be something that directly points to the link between him and the type of malice or villains. The My Hero Academia series gave us very clear reasons for why there should be a traitor. There were two incidents that could be linked to the League of Villains, and both were suspected of a traitor responsible for these two incidents. The first was the attack on the USJ, in which the villains received the UA staff schedule in advance, and he is the part that makes Denki suspicious in the first place. The heroes couldn't contact anyone because someone with an electrical quirk was blocking communication by interfering with their senses. The first one that comes to mind is obviously Denki, although there was also a second electrical user who happened to be in the same location as Denki. Now, it could be possible that this villain could be the electrical user who was disrupting the senses, but not all electrical users have this ability to interact with senses and communication devices. Denki can definitely do, as he literally works with this technology. For example, his special communication device that he always wears. So he has the knowledge of how to block communication, and we have no evidence to show his innocence. In addition, and this is a very strong reason why he should be suspected, his quirk can not only interfere with communications, but also communicate with other communication devices. In theory, he could always send signals to the villains without anyone noticing, and it just goes beyond simple location tracking. For example, with Morse code, with which he could pass on entire information such as the UA's entire staff schedule. And this leads directly to the second incident when villains received information they simply couldn't have if there wasn't any any traitor. If there weren't any traitors among those at the training camp, the villains were able to locate the camp and be perfectly informed of the activities of the students and teachers, so they could develop a perfect strategy. All of this can be leaked to Denki's communication device without anyone noticing. Again, he can be suspected if we have no evidence that he's innocent. The same goes here in our Hagakure traitor video. Just because the League of Villains doesn't know Denki could be the traitor doesn't mean that he isn't. We assume that if there is a traitor among the students of Class 1A, that this traitor has to work directly with All for One, which is why All for One always has all the information and then passes on to Shigaraki and the League of Villains. Another aspect is that every traitor should have its own secrets or flaws in their acting. Usually a traitor takes on a facade and plays a role while hiding his true power and intentions. It is not always easy to keep up the act, and sometimes traitors are inconsistent with this. Can this be applied to Kaminari? Yes, there was an incident that suggests such a possibility. What do we know about his electrification quirk is that he appears to have little to no control over it, exceeding his voltage limit, which at this point is 1.3 million watts, will shut out his brain, leaving him in a vulnerable state for 1 hour. But one time this was not the case. We see how Denki uses this technique with 1.3 million watts, but this time he's completely fine and he has full control over his mental state as well as his physical body. After not being affected by this technique, he looked a bit like realizing that he forgot to pretend. And just a few chapters later, he does the same technique again, and this time, he again looks like that he has a short circuit in his brain. So this can either be a mistake by Horikoshi that can happen to any mangaka, or was deliberately used by Horikoshi to hint at a possible secret. One of the most evident hits that might suggest that Denki could be a traitor is due to Denki's internal design by the author himself. Horikoshi himself said that it looked too villainous, which is why he changed his design again. But if he was going to give Denki such a villainous initial design, then obviously it has to do something with his personality. Why else would he give someone such a character design if the personality wasn't matching it? The only problem with the design that is too villainous is that the actual character is an undercover villain, as it would be just too obvious. That's pretty much all there is to this theory. What do you guys think? Is Denki the traitor in UA, or do you have someone else in mind? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to check out our Toru Hagakure traitor video. We put the link down in the comments below. And remember to subscribe if you don't want to miss the upcoming Ioma traitor video. So that's it for today, folks. Hope you guys enjoyed our video, and if you did, don't forget to smash the like button, and if you are new to our channel, make sure you subscribe with the notification bell turned on. See you guys in the next video. Yami out.